that the motion be agreed to.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on this very important motion, and I do want to thank the member for Scullin for bringing this motion of condolence to the House here today, and I join with all of my colleagues in expressing my deep sorrow for the family and friends of Jo Cox, particularly her husband Brendan and her children. This was a devastating event that occurred in the UK, but I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt that the murder of Jo Cox has ricocheted throughout the world. And in my role as the chair of the UK-Australia Parliamentary Friendship Group here in the Australian Parliament, a big part of our role is to work closely with British MPs and to forge those stronger links and to work together to support one another in the work that we do. And it was absolutely horrifying to see what occurred to a wonderful MP who was out in the community holding what we call a listening post and doing her job. Like the member for Scullin, I want to reflect on the words of her husband, Brendan, and he issued a statement after the death of his wife, and the words are absolutely magnificent, and I would like to read those words. Today is the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, more difficult, more painful, less joyful, less full of love. I and Jo's friends and family are going to work every moment of our lives to love and nurture our kids and to fight against the hate that killed Jo. Jo believed in a better world, and she fought for it every day of her life with an energy and a zest for life that would exhaust most people. She would have wanted two things above all else to happen now. One, that our precious children are bathed in love, and two, that we all unite to fight against the hatred that killed her. Hate doesn't have a creed, race or religion. It is poisonous. Jo would have no regrets about her life. She lived every day of it to the full. And at a later point in time, he also said, she was a politician and she had very strong political views, and I believe she was killed because of those views. I think she died because of them, and she would want to stand up for those in death as much as she did in life. Mr Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt that Jo Cox was an incredibly brave woman who stood by her convictions, and in a mere 13 months she made an extraordinary mark in the work that she did, representing the constituency of Batley and Spen. She was born in West Yorkshire and she studied social and political sciences at Pembroke College in Cambridge. She worked first as a political assistant. She then joined the international humanitarian charity Oxfam, and she rose to become Head of Policy and Advocacy at Oxfam GB. Her charity work led her to advising Sarah Brown, the wife of the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who was spearheading a campaign to prevent deaths in pregnancy and childbirth. Jo Cox was the National Chair of the Labor Women's Network and a senior advisor to the Freedom Fund, an anti-slavery charity. Mr Deputy Speaker, she was selected to contest the Batley and Spen parliamentary seat after the previous incumbent decided not to stand in 2015. And having stood and won that seat, she became a campaigner on issues relating to the Syrian civil war and founded and co-chaired the all-party parliamentary group, the Friends of Syria. As we know, Jo Cox is survived by her husband and her two children. In a couple of days' time, Mr Deputy Speaker, there will be a by-election in Batley and Spen, and Tracy Brabham, who previously was an actress who appeared in Coronation Street, has been chosen as Labor's candidate to contest the seat, and the other major political parties will not contest the election as a mark of respect. Mr Deputy Speaker, Jo Cox was an incredibly brave woman who stood up for her beliefs, her ideals, in the face of extraordinary opposition. And she teaches all of us that despite the challenges that we face as members of Parliament, and despite, I have to say, some of the dangers that I think from time to time we all feel, and I know that I feel, that it is absolutely incumbent on each of us to stand up for our ideals and to fight for the people we represent. And I convey my sincere condolences to her family, her friends, to all British MPs on behalf of the Australian Parliament.
I thank the member for Corangamite. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Griffith.
Thank you, Mr